Hi everyone, Dave Cunningham is my name. Work at Priviti. We do consent management for open banking and data sharing for GDPR and every other regulation that's coming down the track. We as a group had some discussion in advance of this event, and none of us want to be the moderator. So here I am with Jamie volunteering, and essentially we felt that we would just have a chat amongst ourselves. Jamie suggested actual gin and tonic to have a proper fireside chat.
I need them on side, you know, don't make me seem so bad at the start.
Yeah, no, I was up for it too, but we did it. We practiced that last night anyway. So anyway, this group is unlikely to adhere with any structure whatsoever. The only thing that we ask for you is that at some stage you may interact with the questions that are going to be available on your app, and then at the end, perhaps we'll, or during the whole process, perhaps we'll be painting a picture of how we see open banking play out, and we might ask you to vote on whose view you think will come to life. It's not that we're competitive or anything.
No, I think it's yeah.
We haven't been talking about this for weeks.
We haven't, not at all.
All right, so...
Should we do introductions?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jamie Campbell. I head up awareness at Bud. Bud is a financial services network. We connect over 70 financial services into our platform and then license that to banks. We're a dual open banking license holder, so licensed to do AIS and PAS here in the UK.
Hi, I'm Alain Falys. I'm the co-founder and chairman, actually not the CEO, of Yoyo Wallet. We were born about 5 years ago. We are a platform that enables retailers to know their customers at the point of sale and engage with them through loyalty rewards. And we use rich data, basket data, and identity data to actually change the experience at the point of sale for the retail sector.
Hi again. Hello. Yeah. I'm really loud this time. I'm Caroline Plumb. I'm founder and CEO of Fluidly. We are building an autopilot for small and medium-sized business finances. We use the data in cloud accounting packages and bank accounts to automate the forward prediction of cash flow, which is the single biggest pain point for businesses. We're currently applying for our license under AISP and PISP under open banking. So we're kind of taking a neutral outlook. We're going to see what happens.
Okay, my name is Kris Ketels. I am from Swift. Swift is a financial network service provider. I'm probably the only non-fintech here in the whole room. So I'm probably going to be the one that's going to get bashed on.
Shall we start now?
No, just give me 1 minute, right? Swift is, as I said, responsible for providing services, network services amongst banks and corporates, and I'm leading the API strategy team within standards.
Cool. Okay.
Should we just get into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right, PSD2. What's happened?
Not a lot, I think. I mean, people were talking about this big bang moment, right, weren't they? You know, this deadline date when everything was going to change, the world was going to be different. But I think actually what happened is, you know, at the most it's going to be a slow burn. Maybe it's going to be a damp squid. Let's see. But I think the world has changed. It's moving on. But I think there's going to be years of progress required.
It wasn't deadline day like Sky Sports deadline day.
No, there was no transfer window.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about sporting analogies, so you just go for it.
Well, that's the end of my knowledge as well. So I set myself.
But it wasn't supposed to be, right? It wasn't supposed to be like, you know, January 13th or whatever it was. There's going to be like a big change in everything we do. You know, with our banking apps or with any app we use. I think maybe the press has kind of misread what open banking was about. I agree it's going to be a slower burn than we think. I think it's more like a beta phase, you know, if you take the tech terms of open banking. That's where we are right now. The promise is great. There's some technology out there. There's an API that banks are actively working on, but it's still a beta, and it needs to be improved on so that we as fintechs, we can leverage fully the potential here.
Yeah. I think when the API goes live, you know, and you're expecting something in market that day, when developers in TPPs hadn't even seen the end, the full specification. Obviously, it was never going to be, okay, right, here are all these amazing kind of apps in market. But I think most of the action has been going on backstage. And you have banks actually coming to the market with ready APIs. You have companies who are licensed to do so, testing those, and seeing the how many people we can push through it, and seeing the limits of those things. I think, but most of the applications that I think have been submitted to the FCA are around the AIS side.
That's right.
And it's interesting because you almost think that open banking is all about kind of so what, okay? I can see all my information in one place, but what does that enable me to do? And I think that's where the interesting part comes when you're talking about payments, which is that's the action-based, things that you can do as a result of open banking. So it's interesting to see not many companies wanting to go for that dual permission, or at least not many companies being granted that dual permission.
Yeah, well, I think even if they have granted it, it's difficult even to integrate with the bank anyway. So you rock up with your license and say, "Here I am," and 12 months later, you could still be waiting to integrate, right? So I think both of you have gone through the process of trying to and actually got some live integrations. Caroline, you had an interesting view as well in our discussion, and I suppose you know the pain of what it has taken to actually get something live.
Thankfully, not personally.
Yeah, but you share the pain and the empathy that you have within the company and the culture that you foster, right?
Sure.
Okay, all right. Yeah. But Caroline, you were saying that for you, there's other ways other than this license, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we work predominantly with small and medium-sized businesses, and many of those are in the cloud accounting package. Now, you can access the bank feed and the banking data via the cloud accounting package. It's not quite yet clear to me why you'd want to get regulated and take on all the regulatory standards, take on the required insurance, take on sort of the additional risk to get that same data, which is accessible through other channels. And I think the challenge at the moment for open banking is that until the PISP use case is really unlocked, and unlocked in a big way, that sort of screen scraping data, the previous data, is available through other sources where it may well be richer and more classified and have more data around it. So I think unless you want to know the live bank data today, or you have quite a limited use case, then there are richer data sources around that you might get just as far with.
Yeah, we look at it slightly differently because we obviously cater for retailers and consumers. Yeah. So, I mean, a real live application of open banking for us, when all things are ready from an API standpoint, looks like this. Today, you use your Yoyo app to pay at Planet Organic or Cafe Nero. You get stamps, rewards, and vouchers, discounts, and so on and so forth, or retailer specific. In the open banking world, we are able to effectively attach a payment transaction to a basket data. So you use your bank card as you would today, which is your debit card, from any of the large banks, and you pay at Planet Organic or Cafe Nero, and you get the same rewards points and so on and so forth directly in Yoyo or in a banking app, right? So linking actually a card transaction to basket is actually very innovative, and that we can do in the context of open banking. Actually, we can do it today. We've done it with Starling Bank, which doesn't have to comply yet to all the CMA9 open banking standards, and it works perfectly well. They have a beautiful API. We're a tech company, they're a tech company, works perfectly well. But if you transport that to one of these large banks in the UK, obviously they have legacy system they have to work with. So it's going to take a little longer, but that's a real live application of open banking. I can pay with my card today, and I get all the benefits of loyalty directly attached to it. So I think it's great, but it's going to take some time.
Do you think you need to actually be directly integrated with the API, though? Because clearly there are multiple layer services popping up, from kind of salt edge to true layer. I mean, the work of integrating directly, well, there is still a proliferation of, different things are going on at different rates. It's quite hard to navigate.
That's true, but I think there is the regulatory angle here as well, right? Yeah. Because there's a trust component. All of that stuff needs to be with user consent. Therefore, user has to give, in our case, Yoyo consent that you can access their current account data, so that we can attach a payment transaction to the basket data. And that the regulatory wrapper is key here. And that's why I think you kind of have to work though with the open banking API because it comes with the FCA regulation, and I know it's a burden, but we all fintech companies, we've all been there. Of course, we could actually go straight to a bank and work with the bank, technology team, and like we've done with Starling Bank, it works perfectly well. But in the context of the big banks, I think we have to take the whole lot. It's also GDPR, it's the FCA, it's everything in one single lump.
I think indeed the problem that banks are facing is slightly different as what fintechs are facing, which is at least the larger banks, the global players. They are seeing this proliferation of, I would say, open banking standards happening. And they're really worried about the fact that they have now their constituents and their clients and so on. And in the short to medium future, they will have to support all these variations of the same thing. And this is a very costly, and they're looking for solutions for that, collaborating with some of the fintechs. But they're also looking at, like us, Swift, because we are a standards body, to say, look, guys, you have to push this towards the community and make sure that the commoditized side of open banking, which is what is an account, what is a payment initiation. This is not the information that banks make money on anymore. This is what everyone is doing nowadays. Now, this has to be pushed to the entire community to be the same, so that at least fintechs and banks start competing not on that, not on payment initiation, not on account management, but on the services that you guys build around that. And this is really the area where everyone should be focusing on, not specifically on the services that PSD2 is offering or opening up, because this is just the entry point for everyone to start building services.
On that point on commoditization, if you roll PSD2 forward to a situation where the customer journey for account aggregation is really seamless, and the journeys for payments is really seamless, and you're a bank, you're looking at a situation when, right, okay, the daily banking activity that most of my customers do, i.e. how much money have I got and I need to pay a friend or whatever.
Right.
If those things can be done outside of your ecosystem,
right,
then you're in a real bind, because you don't want to lose that sales channel, right, with your, and that direct daily relationship with your with your customers. So, exactly on your point, if you have these things which are now kind of commoditized, what else then are you kind of going to offer? Exactly. And it comes back to that. So what? Okay, I've got all my information in one place, and I think there's lots of different solutions in the market to do it. One of the approaches that Bud has taken is by connecting all financial services in one place. What we've been kind of aiming to do is take transactional information and use that really to understand users, where they're being served poorly or where they're incurring high fees, and making it really easy for these customers to find better solutions for them. Yeah. So whether it's in currency exchange, whether it's in utility bill switching, or whether it's insurance, understanding the customer journeys, because of that hard transactional data, and then kind of the so what moment of, here are a few products that I think someone who's doing activities like you could really benefit from, whether it's limiting fees or otherwise.
Right.
And I think more and more we will see kind of solutions come to market which which demonstrate beyond the commoditized parts of PSD2 that are offering genuine value to customers.
Yeah.
From my point of view, I mean, I think the idea of a common standard is a myth, really, at the moment. I mean, to your point, you're a standards organisation. The card schemes have run standards and back office systems and provide a great way for that to work. At the moment, we have this idea that everybody builds a OAuth solution, for example, but you've got 9 separate in the CMA banks, 9 separate custom OAuth solutions, and they couldn't collaborate and deliver a common interface to Yoyo if they tried at the moment to push them all together. I know for us, it's been our focus to figure out, okay, how are we going to navigate PSD2 and GDPR and allow for permissions to be given or consent to be granted in a common way. And our work is with the banks themselves to say, why don't you just put this software in, have structure to the way that you onboard third parties, make it 12 weeks or 6 weeks rather than 12 months, and the fintech has already died by the time, from the time that you say yes to the time that you're implemented. So I think for the standards bodies like Swift, it's great that you're getting more involved in trying to push this so that we can have more innovation built on the back of, rather than having a queue of of interesting solutions queuing up for a custom integration at every bank. It's just, it's not sustainable in my view anyway. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, you know, you kind of touch on PSD2 and GDPR kind of like going hand in hand. So it's always good to remember that PSD2 is not just something happening in isolation, you know, and how it sits with GDPR. You know, from our point of view, we're really interested in the data portability side of GDPR and putting that power back into the hands of the customer. I think that's going to be really interesting with models such as ours, which is, you know, much more of an ecosystem where you're just as a bare bones of what the product does, it just introduces people to the ecosystem in a lot more seamless way. Right. But adding on top of that, the ability for data portability, you know, on the customer's authentication, that's really cool. That's really powerful because you can start, you know, making those kind of interactions with new products a little bit more seamless and a little bit more on the customer's terms.
The fact GDPR is actually going to make, in my opinion, consumers more aware of their power than open banking. I think open banking is not a consumer brand. It's not. It's actually quite a.
I printed T-shirts there.
Yeah. Where is it?
We're getting a T-shirt cannon at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, you know, nobody kind of understands it from a consumer standpoint. I don't think. GDPR, although it's kind of a mouthful as well, it's actually much more tangible, particularly in the context of all the scandals we're hearing about around data and so on. So I think that's going to actually, I hope anyway, push the main players out there to accelerate the pace at which they open up, you know, the user information, the account information. I mean, let's not forget, all this is about the consumer data and them giving consent to me, Yoyo, and you, and all of us using their data, right? And I think it's super powerful. So I hope there's going to be some kind of a movement on the consumer side to say, well, we want this to happen, right? We know that our data is better protected because the regulator is protecting us through GDPR. And we want to give access of our account information to more players that can add more value, whether it's account aggregation, budgeting, loyalty, you know, whatever, and of course, small business, cash flow management. I think it's great.
An interesting use case that I saw, which is, to me, what is the future gonna do as well, is the fact that, for instance, a large bank, very large bank actually, actually is now collaborating with Google. It's Citibank, who has a certain reach, right? And they're very close to the consumer. And Citibank has, for instance, on its customers, a credit history. Google doesn't. So if you combine these two, then Citibank can offer microloans for web payments, which Google can't because they don't have the credit history, and which Citibank can't because they don't have the reach. And this is exactly where this is going, I think. It's all about finding new collaborations, and the whole open banking and is opening up new opportunities, but it forces banks to completely rethink their business model. And I mean, no one would have imagined that a Citibank or a Nordea would have 5 years ago considered working together with Google on a financial service to offer. And that's exactly what is, to me, going to happen in the next coming years as well.
I mean, I agree with you in that I don't think there's a lot of interest in the services that are doing the same things in a different way to that already exist. I mean, I think pure substitution is not a desperately exciting form of innovation. Yes. Whether even if you're slightly faster or slightly quicker or slightly cheaper, you're not actually providing fundamentally something new. And I think where open banking will actually start to be of interest is where you get, new capabilities, new categories defined by bringing together different data sources and doing something different with them, in a way that hasn't been possible before. And that's really where the opportunity lies, I think. But I'm not sure you need to actually. I'm still not clear that you need to actually be directly integrated to the APIs to make that happen. Somebody else's core capability is going to be to deliver that across the multitude of standards, across the different, taking all the regulatory burden. Why should everybody, have to go direct?
And it seems like Australia might have a different standard where you have a raw data company which is regulated to handle the raw data from account aggregation, and then there's almost a second license for companies that don't necessarily need the raw data but can take kind of insights off the back of it. So it's what
is Berlin
yeah.
group as well with different
Berlin,
standards,
yeah, exactly.
right?
So many different.
Who wants to navigate that mess?
Well, what's interesting, going back to your your points on use cases and genuinely new kind of models in the it's good that big banks are also looking at this. A number of large banks here have already kind of announced initiatives that they have for open banking, whether it's new apps. We're working with HSBC and First Direct with the app Arthur, which is in market now, plug, using kind of the open banking idea and the thesis behind it, as well as marketplace banking, which we're seeing a lot of challengers do by offering third-party products within that banking experience. So it's something that's definitely being adapted by large banks, not just TPPs that are really interested in kind of rocking the boat, but also banks who are looking to experiment and see where PSD2 where it can open up in terms of a future business model for.
I think it's spearheading a new era of collaboration with the fintechs. There are actually very few fintechs out there that are true challenges to banks, and definitely true challenges to bank survival. I think banks are there to, for the very long term. I do think, though, that type of regulatory pressure is really making banks actually open up to these discussions, but in a genuine way, right? So some banks will decide that they can remain at the utility level, and most banks, I assume, will want to actually either create new services from that competitive pressure which is created by the fintechs, or collaborate with the fintechs. We're talking to pretty much every bank in the UK, an increasing number of banks in Europe, which are getting ready for PSD2, because we can integrate all these functionalities within a bank app, right? Yeah. So there's no conflict there at all. So I think it really is helping that collaboration in many ways.
I think it's difficult hats off to you for navigating that, and I think it's great to see also, Caroline, your view as to views that maybe aren't being thought about at the moment through other partners. We'd love to get the views of the audience on a couple of interactive polls here. So if you do happen to have the app, we're going to go to question 3, which is what does the future look like? So it's will we see the widespread embracing of open banking? Will it be never, in 10 years, in 5 years, next year, or is it already happening? So we'd love your views on that as we discuss things. But yeah, it seems. As we have a few moments, and we might go with. Let's go with yourself, Kris, just to see, how do you see this thing panning out? What's your own view before we get the audiences?
I think I already lifted a little bit of the surface of what I think is going to happen, is that banks are so worried that they're going to be disintermediated, and rightfully so. The whole API story is an enabler. It just allows small companies, fintechs, to enter into the game, and if it doesn't work, fail fast, get out and try something else. That was unheard of 10 years ago or 15 years ago. You had to be a bank to get into the banking space, and this is now changed, and this is going to get, well, from a banking perspective, worse, in the sense that every bank will continuously have to reconsider their business models and review how they are collaborating with the fintechs, because now I think it's rippling through that they cannot get out of that paradigm that they will have to collaborate with these new players in the financial world, and those that don't are just going to be cut off. It's as simple as that. That's my view.
Practical barriers for large banks to go and partner with fintech firms. The timelines are a nightmare. Just to go through procurement is one thing. Then to actually do the implementation, you're looking at more than a year. And so I think, where we've kind of seen quite a lot of success is as a platform, and banks really looking at platform partners, I think, is a really interesting strategy where, arguably you don't really want a massive bank to be agile. You kind of want them to be quite stoic and they're reliable, and that's kind of their job. However, they can partner really strategically with platforms who can kind of add the layer of agility. We can go and integrate APIs of whatever companies and stuff, and we can do that relatively quickly. We have the insurance, we've got the regulation to kind of conduct all those stuff. for a big bank to kind of actively go and strategically partner with a platform, it adds a kind of a level of competitiveness that arguably they haven't had before. But also, when it comes to seeking genuine fintech solutions that will, those collaborations that they really want from a commercial standpoint, then it can be as easy as flipping a switch, as opposed to here's a long procurement process and here's and now we have a big consultancy firm doing the implementation for £2 million.
Yeah. I don't think open banking enables new fintech to thrive, or I don't think that was the point actually from a regulatory standpoint. I think the fintechs were there already, right? They're here, we hear there's going to be some new ones next year and some come and go, but the a fintech which actually is growing has actually found a niche somewhere, right? So anybody who's waiting for open banking to survive, I say good luck right now, because it's like there's so many risks in building a company, let alone being at the mercy of 9 banks, and not talking about the whole of Europe with PSD2, with every bank having their own API.
Right.
So I think fintechs are here. What open banking does is giving access to a data set, which is the ownership of the consumer, but somehow it was locked in the thing called the bank, my bank, right? It's all about data. Everything we do now as fintechs, and of course banks have done traditionally, is basically manipulate data. There's more data accessible. The data we're concerned about is the data that we collect at the time of purchase, the SKU data, the basket data, that we have access to current account information. It's enriched data that has to be for the benefit of the consumer. And that's all it does, right? It's opening that up. And some banks will decide to collaborate, and some banks will decide to fight it.
But even that is under scrutiny, I would say. Like if like Facebook, I think in some cases they know more about your financial history than a bank does. I mean, so even that is now even questioned, that the bank, what they can offer that no one else can offer, is the fact that they have for instance, your credit rating and your credit history. Even that is dissipating. So even there, I think they have to reinvent themselves and say, how can we position ourselves in the worlds of Facebook and so on. Yeah. So just for that. Sure.
Yeah, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement that consumers aren't going to actively go out of their way to do a PSD2. It's not going to be a thing that they are actively engaged. It's going to be in the existing kind of consumer journeys that they're doing already, right. And whether it's within a banking app, them saying, hey, you can now log into all your other services, right. Or whether it's a kind of a new checkout journey for an online purchase, that's going to be the real success metrics of PSD2. And we were talking around, if anyone was at the roundtable yesterday, the open banking roundtable yesterday, one of the things that Imran, the trustee for the open banking implementation entity, touched on was the success of PSD2, open banking, call it whatever you want, is as soon as it comes out of the financial services industry and non-financial entities look at this and go, well, actually, this is a really good way to engage our customers in a different way, or to understand our customers in a totally new way that we haven't really kind of been able to do before. And I think that's going to be probably not year 1, but certainly year 2, year 3, that will be really, really interesting as this kind of rolls out and gets and starts to affect different industries.
Right. I think. So you're building a platform and you're creating an ecosystem there that people can access different things.
Correct,
Alain, you're working on integration with loads of different banks individually with Yoyo.
We have the platform. It's also a platform play. A bank can plug in Yoyo within a banking app and get digital receipts and retailer loyalty.
Do you see, Caroline, a platform situation emerging where you have an ecosystem versus ecosystem, Xbox versus PlayStation scenario in the banks? I mean, we have Starling and Monzo. Well, Starling may be more established, and Monzo announced their beta of their marketplace at the moment. Do you see the big entities going for it?
I mean, I think you're going to see a layer. I think there are going to be very few players who want to directly integrate with multiple ecosystems. I'm skeptical there's going to be one standard that's going to work across everything. So I think there'll be a few players providing layer services, and then there'll be a multitude of players building on top of those. And I think if you look what happened in telco, the most interesting parts when that started to open up are the over-the-top services. As consumers, we are really poor at forecasting what might come up, especially when it comes to innovation. No one would have foreseen Netflix being a dominant player, effectively using all that bandwidth. And I think the interesting use cases are not the substitution ones. They're, for me, cases like this credit ladder, which is taking banking data about rental payments to create a credit score for renters. Or we're doing automated cash flow forecasting because that hasn't been possible before, the level of granularity of detail. I think you're going to start seeing different use cases, new use cases, different players. Whether they all need to be part of the tight open banking ecosystem is one thing, but the excitement to me is new capability.
Excellent. There's a question here from the audience, if anyone would like to take it. Will Amazon and any other retailers come to dominate the PIS market? Why and why not? Is the add-on to that? Do you see Amazon really coming in here?
For any retailer who's interested in taking away card fees associated with selling their products, I think, why wouldn't you want to look at it? Whether they would go and be PIS regulated themselves or whether they would use an intermediary, I think that's probably the question.
I think you're going to see it where it makes sense in their customer journey. I don't think they're going to move wholesale into banking. They're just going to be for parts of the customer journey that kind of makes it frictionless and makes sense.
Yeah, setting up a new payee with these standards is not the smoothest experience yet. So I think until we get that totally seamless, I think that's going to be.
Yeah, hopefully a consent management system will emerge to allow such things to happen.
Yeah.
No, but honestly, we need to get to wrap up. But let's see the audience's views. Can we get the view of the poll, the answers to the poll, to finish?
Cracking.
It's amazing.
It's overwhelmingly.
It's pretty evenly balanced. I think we need to say that.
That is worrying.
It's really it's good to see.
Hey. In 5 years.
10 years.
So
only 4 people voted.
That's good. It's a good idea to 62. Wow. It's a good idea to just throw money and just bank on that PIS and AIS solution panning out for you.
Well, I mean, if that's the business model that you're banking on, then yeah.
All right. Thanks to everyone and thanks to the audience
Thank you.
for the interaction.
Thanks.
Cheers.